All right, so today we're going deep into something I think a lot of people have heard about. But honestly, I think we know surprisingly little about.
Yeah.
We're talking hypnosis.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things you hear people talking about and you maybe even know someone who's tried it,
Yeah.
but it's kind of a black box. Like we don't really know how it works.
It's like we know a light switch turns the lights on, but we don't know anything about the wiring behind the walls.
Exactly. And what's so interesting is that we see the results, right? Like people go into these trances, they maybe remember things they'd forgotten. Therapists use it to help with all kinds of things. But the science behind it, like what's actually happening in the brain, has been kind of a big question mark.
And that's what makes this new research out of the University of Zurich so fascinating.
Yeah, this is like cutting edge stuff.
They've actually managed to measure changes in brain activity during hypnosis, which is a pretty big deal.
Huge.
So for our deep dive today, we're going to unpack exactly what they found.
Right, we're going to try to pull back the curtain a little bit on what's happening neurologically when someone's hypnotized.
So first off, can you tell us a bit about these studies? How did they actually go about studying this?
Yeah, so they actually did 3 separate studies, which is great because it gives us more confidence in the results.
Right, more data.
And each study had 50 healthy participants.
Oh, wow. So that's a pretty decent sample size.
Exactly, not just a handful of people. So that's really good.
Okay, so they had their participants, but I imagine they weren't just like asking people to relax and then scanning their brains, right? Like they had to actually induce hypnosis.
Absolutely. And this is where it gets really interesting. They guided the participants through both a light and a deep state of hypnosis.
Oh, so 2 different levels.
Yeah. And here's the key. They used the exact same spoken script for both.
Oh, I see. So that's smart because it controls for the content of the suggestions, right?
Right, exactly. Because you could imagine that maybe the words themselves are causing some of the changes in the brain, but by keeping the script constant, they could really isolate the effect of the depth of the hypnosis.
Yeah, that's a clever design.
Really well controlled.
Okay, so they've got the participants. They're inducing these different states of hypnosis now. How are they actually seeing what's going on in the brain?
Well, they use these really cool neuroimaging techniques.
So like brain scans, right?
Exactly. Think of it like taking pictures of the brain in action.
Cool.
They probably use a few different methods. One is called fMRI. It's like a fancy brain scan that tracks blood flow so you can see which areas are more active.
Like a heat map of the brain.
Yeah, exactly. And they might have also used EEG, which measures electrical activity in the brain.
Ah, so fMRI for seeing where the action is, and EEG for listening to the brain's electrical chatter.
You got it.
Okay, so picture this. We've got our participants hooked up to these brain scanners. They're going into these different hypnotic states. What did they actually find what was happening in their brains?
So one of the most interesting things they found was in these specific areas of the brain that are involved in attention and body perception.
Okay, so like how we pay attention to things and how we experience our own bodies.
Exactly. And during hypnosis, they saw a reduction in activity in those areas.
So those parts of the brain were kind of quieting down.
Yeah, like they were taking a little break.
And not just that, even the connections between those areas seemed to get weaker.
Right, so less communication going on between those parts of the brain.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting to me, because if you think about what people typically describe when they're hypnotized, it kind of makes sense.
Totally.
Like people often talk about this really intense focus, almost like tunnel vision.
Right, like the rest of the world just fades away.
And they might also feel detached from their bodies, like they're not as aware of physical sensations.
Yeah, that's super common.
And if those brain areas that usually handle attention and body awareness are sort of chilling out and disconnecting, it could explain that.
Right, it's like the volume gets turned down on all those normal sensory inputs, so you can really zero in on whatever the hypnotist is suggesting.
It's like the brain is prioritizing certain information and filtering out the rest.
Precisely.
So it's not just subjective feelings anymore, right? We're actually seeing the neurological basis for those experiences.
That's what's so cool about this research.
Just like we're finally starting to understand the wiring behind the light switch.
Yeah.
Okay, so they looked at brain activity, but they also looked at brain waves.
Yes, they did. They were interested in these things called theta waves.
Theta waves, now I've heard of those before. Aren't those associated with like relaxation and sleep?
Exactly. So
Yeah.
you've got these different types of brain waves, and theta waves are the ones that tend to dominate when you're really relaxed, like when you're just about to fall asleep.
Okay,
And guess what they found during hypnosis?
more theta waves.
You got it. They saw a significant increase in theta wave activity, particularly in the deeper states of hypnosis.
So it's not that people are actually falling asleep during hypnosis?
No, not at all.
But their brains are showing similar electrical activity to that very relaxed state.
Exactly. And that, again, lines up with what people often report about hypnosis feeling very calm and peaceful.
Yeah, like a deep sense of relaxation.
Right.
Okay, so we've got changes in brain activity, changes in brain waves, but you also mentioned that they found changes in brain chemistry.
I did. Now, this is where it gets a little more technical.
Hit me with it.
So they found that during deep hypnosis, the levels of a neurochemical called myo-inositol went up significantly.
Myo-inositol. Okay, that's a mouthful. What is that and why is it important?
So myo-inositol is this molecule that's involved in a bunch of different processes in the brain, and the researchers think that the increased levels they saw might actually indicate a decrease in overall neural activity.
Oh, interesting. So it's not necessarily that the brain is firing on all cylinders. It's more like it's shifting into a different mode of operation.
Yeah, exactly. And that mode might be one that's more about deep rest or focused internal processing.
So like the brain is maybe taking a break from its usual busy work and turning its attention inward.
Right.
Okay, so let's try to sum all of this up. We're seeing less activity and weaker connections in the brain areas that handle attention and body awareness.
Okay.
We're seeing an increase in theta waves, those brain waves associated with deep relaxation.
Okay.
And we're seeing an increase in myo-inositol, which might suggest a kind of slowing down or re-regulation of brain activity.
That's a pretty good summary.
So it's like we're starting to get a real picture of what's happening in the brain during hypnosis.
We are, and it's pretty amazing considering how mysterious this all used to be.
Right, like we're going from this idea of hypnosis as this black box to actually having brain scans and chemical measurements that correlate with the experience.
And that's huge because it means we can start to move beyond just observing the effects of hypnosis and actually start to understand the mechanisms behind it.
Right, and that could have all sorts of implications for how we use hypnosis therapeutically. Like if we know exactly how it's affecting the brain, we can potentially refine and optimize its use for treating different conditions.
Like anxiety or pain management,
Exactly.
so much potential there.
So for our listeners out there who are fascinated by the brain and the power of the mind, I think this research is a really cool example of how science is helping us to understand these really complex phenomena.
Totally. And it shows that even something like hypnosis, which might seem kind of out there, actually has these measurable effects on the brain.
Right, it's not just woo-woo stuff anymore.
And the more we understand about how these things work, the more we can potentially harness their power to help people.
Absolutely. Now, this is just one study. There's still so much more research to be done, but it's definitely a big step forward.
Yeah, it's like they've opened a door and now we can start exploring what's on the other side.
And it makes you wonder what other states of mind or therapeutic interventions might we be able to study with this level of detail in the future.
Yeah, what other black boxes are out there waiting to be unlocked?
It's a really exciting time to be studying the brain and the mind.
It is.
Well, we hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the neuroscience of hypnosis.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
If you did, be sure to click like and subscribe to the Unlock Your Mind channel.
And keep those minds open.
We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.